Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown. Welcome to the Caregiving Book Club. We talk to authors of caregiving books about the process of writing a caregiving book. And so I'm thrilled and delighted to welcome my friend Jennifer O'Brien. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi,
So you're
wonderful
the
to be here.
you're the author of this really terrific book called The Hospice Doctor's Widow. And what I love about our conversation today is you're going to open up our eyes in terms of thinking about what's a book, because yours is a journal, it's reflections, it's also art.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I guess tell us what the original form of this was.
Okay. So this is the book that was never meant to be a book. My late husband, Bob Lehmberg, who was a hospice and palliative care physician, was diagnosed with a stage 4 metastatic cancer. And I am a self-taught collage artist. And so right away, almost immediately, I started as a form of self-care, keeping an art journal. And I further decided to teach myself digital collage in the process. I can't say I would have done that over again because it was this crazy combination of head and heart work that, where I knew what I wanted it to look like, but I couldn't get the machine to make it look like that. And which I guess was probably good. Anyway, so I started it as a journal, an art journal, to document my own thoughts and feelings, to be a creative outlet, so that, because as everyone knows who has done this for even half a second, you need to take care of yourself, and you need some stuff that will just help your mind and your heart, escape to a wonderland. And that's what art journaling did for me. So I kept the journal. Of course, he lived for 22 months. He got to a point where the caregiving was so intense that all I was really doing was making notes in a handwritten journal, right? And then he died, and I both went back to those notes and created art and pages in the journal, in the art journal. And then I also kind of kept going with the art journaling as a grief coping mechanism for about a year and a half after he died. And he never even saw it. I don't even know if he ever knew I was doing it. My make a living job is in healthcare, in the administrative leadership side of healthcare. I do this interim CEOing for very large physician organizations. So about a year and a half after he died, when I've finished up the art journal, I've used a a vacation book software, right? So like when you go on a vacation, you can drop your JPEGs into this software, and then they send you a hardback book that documents your vacation and all your pictures. Well, I decided I wanted to hold my journal instead of just look at the pages on the screen. So I used one of those to drop the JPEGs in. So then I had a physical book. I'm working at this very large multi-specialty practice. This neurologist has told me that he's in the process of diagnosing 3 different patients with ALS, which is a terminal diagnosis. And I bring him my journal and say, you might want to take a look at this. He takes it home, comes back the next day. Jen, you're not getting your journal back. I will be loaning it to these 3 patients and their spouse and their family caregivers, because this helps close a gap between what I can do for the patient and what the family caregiver really needs. And if he said, and you need to get this published, because this is a very useful tool, and we need to make this available to lots of people. Well, you can imagine how compelling that was, right? Like, here I am, just getting over the fact that my husband, who I was crazy about and took care of for 2 years, and now he's been, he's died and so forth. And then this whole really amazing thing comes about where my silly little art journal might actually help some people. And so I went to work finding a publisher and found a small publisher that was willing to take a chance on it. And I say take it, yeah, I say take a chance because it's a very unusual book. It's as you are holding it up, right? It's 8 by 10. It's premium color. It's a picture book, for lack of a better term. And so it really was taking a chance. It is such an atypical book that this small press said, yeah, we're willing to try this out. And they published it, and it's done really well. And it won a bunch of awards, which is also kind of crazy. But, you know, moreover, it's helped a lot of caregivers. And that's the main thing.
Something that I think is so on target when you're putting a book together for family caregivers is that it's easy to read. It's not complicated. It's not, oh my gosh, how am I going to read all this? You
Right.
can sit and look at a page. And so, for instance, one of the pages that really spoke to me are the page that I just held up, which has a TV on it, and it says, the television in the waiting or infusion room of a healthcare facility never provides comfort or reassurance. Absolutely none,
Never,
ever. Right.
never,
Yes.
ever, ever.
Ever, ever.
just-
It's an irritant, and more than
Yes.
anything, it's an irritant.
It's an irritant. In fact, since my caregiving experience in my interim CEO positions, I have made it a mission to get rid of all of the televisions in the facility, whether it's the waiting room or the infusion room. So
There actually was a company that I was trying to work with who provided educational programming when you sat in the waiting room, and they did it disease specific. And I said, but family caregivers want to connect to others who get it. What if you used that as an opportunity? But they didn't get it. So anyway.
yeah, that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure.
It's a huge
Because
missed
The
opportunity.
other thing is, I gotta say, with this educational, in fact, I just did a meme post that's going to come up in a couple weeks on my social about this. When you're doing education, whether it's cancer treatment drugs, commercials on television, there's a whole slew of people that doesn't sit well with, right? Like, all those do is make me sad because my husband, did not respond to those drugs, or they were contraindicated for his condition or whatever it was. And then there's a whole bunch of other people that those ads who have no exposure to whatever the disease is. And so they just think, oh yeah, well, if you get breast cancer, you just take that, that one drug and you'll get back to gardening and antiquing in no time. Like, yeah, that's not how it works. And those things make it seem like, well, this is a piece of cake. What's your problem? And that's not supportive for patients or caregivers. So I mean, even that educational stuff, nope, don't do it, man. Don't do it.
Yeah. And I think about the opportunity to really support someone during a waiting period. And actually, I'll just tell you as an aside, we used to do this program called the Wait Buddy. We are in, oh gosh, WAIT stood for something really kind of awesome. And it was volunteers who would send texts to family caregivers during a long wait. So if you had a carry during surgery, our volunteers would text you
Right.
throughout the time. If you had just a wait during a typical doctor's appointment, we would have volunteers who would send out texts to those family caregivers waiting.
Yeah.
It was really awesome. It was really
It is
awesome.
awesome. That's what I try. That's actually, there's another page in the book that says our best friends in this are those who check in often rather, with no expectation of a response. And I try to do that now, where I just text a little heart or a little bouquet of flowers to my friends who I know are going through caregiving. Yeah.
Just to be thought of is
Yes.
helpful. Yes. Right.
Because you feel so isolated and forgotten. I
Mhm.
mean, especially on the weekends. Long weekends are the worst, because not only does the rest of the world going out and having picnics, but inevitably, if there's going to be some sort of healthcare crisis with your recipient, it happens on a holiday
Always,
weekend.
yeah. Oh, yeah, always.
Yeah.
4th of July. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of my family caregivers in my community had said years ago, you know what, I just dread 4th of July because I can't go to the parade and I'm
Right.
not going to the picnic. And so we do a Family Caregiver Awareness Day now, which is Grill for a Family Caregiver over 4th of July, to remember to include them by just
Yes.
dropping off a couple grilled hot dogs. So
Yeah.
you have the taste of the
Of the
festivity.
occasion. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the other page that really stood out to me, and I'm counting the words, but I can't count quickly. It's less than 10 words. And it is so honest and so reflective of the reality. I am not suicidal, but I would welcome death.
Yeah.
I think that kind of honesty is so important for us to read. But I think as an author, I wonder, how did you think through putting that in? I just wondered if it gave you pause at all, or you were just all in. I'm sharing the honesty of my experience.
Right. It's a good question, Denise. Like I said, it was the book that was never meant to be a book. That was exactly how I felt. I'm not going to off myself, but boy, would I gladly give in to death if it came upon me right now. And that was the note in the journal. I mean, and I felt like that on occasion. There's another page so that came to me on a day after Bob had died. There's another page in the journal before he died where it says something like, sometimes I wish that I would get cancer and beat him to the finish line. And that, I think, speaks more to that weight that the caregiver carries, and the fact that in some ways, the patient, the care recipient, especially in our case, because we knew this, we knew death was peaceful. We knew that death is not the enemy. So I knew that Bob was headed toward this peaceful death and transition out of this earthly life. But what was ahead for me? What was ahead for me was continuing to care for him. And yes, it's the most rewarding experience, but it's also the most difficult thing I've ever done. And so what was ahead for me was continuing to take care of him, and then losing him, and having the grief to face. And so, yeah, there were plenty of times, I wasn't going to do anything about it, take an action, hurt myself, but I sure would have welcomed death, either sometimes before he died and certainly after he died. Yeah.
I think of a caregiving experience as really the search for relief. And that's what you just expressed. It's this relief from the agony, relief from the suffering, relief from the worry. And I think it's so important that we talk about our search for relief, because it is that hard.
Right, because it is hard. There's another page that talks about how and this happened on many occasions, as I'm sure it's happened to everyone who's been through this, where I kind of listed out these things. I'm not going to miss the injections. I'm not going to miss the moaning. I'm not going to miss trying to comfort him and clearly being unable to do it. I'm not going to miss changing the sheets in the middle of the night because of the night sweats. I'm going to miss loving someone so much that I do all of these things. And that's because every time you start to think, and there are plenty, at least there were for me, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this another day, another night. More likely, the nights are always harder, in my opinion. Each time you think that, then you get caught by this reality. Yeah, but the day I'm not doing this, he's died. And yeah, so that's the caregiver's paradox.
Let's talk about the logistics, the other side of the book. So
Okay.
you found a publisher. I'm just curious if you had weighed the option of self-publishing versus finding a publisher.
Right. Well, That's a good question. So I don't think, for whatever reason, Denise, I never really considered self-publishing. Um, and and I'm gonna say, I think that I'm not sure. First of all, I think there are some incredibly successful books that are self-published. It just wasn't going to be something I would be particularly good at. I've met several self-published authors since then of hugely successful books, of some books that are successful because it got that out there, and it got their work out there so that it's available. Some selling, buku copies, and some just, being there and being the accomplishment. For those reasons, so the whole idea of production and distribution, those were intimidating to me. I know I'm good at some things. And that was not something I felt I could be good at. And I'm a very reluctant entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur. So the fact that I've landed in this spot where I'm trying to get the word out to people, and basically I've landed in an entrepreneurial spot, is just very frustrating to me, because it's just not my makeup. So that was the main reason, was a publisher had the experience. I started with just a small press. I live in a small town, and there's a couple of small presses here, and one of them in particular does a lot of nonfiction. So I arranged to, get my book over to them, and they took a look at it. They thanked me, but they weren't instantly excited about it. So I started reading about, I went online and tried to find the agent of, I don't know if anybody has read When Breath Becomes Air, but When Breath Becomes Air was written by a neurosurgery resident who got a bad lung cancer and died, and his wife helped get the book published posthumously. His wife is Lucy Kalanithi. And so I felt like an agent who was welcoming to that book might be interested in my book, because my book, spoiler alert, hospice doctor's widow, he died, and not everybody is kind of keen on a book about death, and so, or caregiving up to and through death. So I had just found that person. They worked for a big agency, and there was this proposal process. And so I had just started this massive proposal that they required to even potentially get an audience with one of their agents. It was huge. And I mean, I was doing it. I've got business background. Like I really wasn't, but anyway, I was doing this massive proposal that the agency required for you to even get a consideration, when I got an email from the local small press saying, "We'd like to publish your book." And I was like, oh my gosh, great. I don't have to work on this proposal anymore. Besides the fact that, yes, I had somebody who wanted to publish the book. So yeah, that was my story.
So that's so interesting. I love this question about self-publishing versus publishing, because everybody has a little different perspective on which way they go. And if you go the publishing, where you get a publisher, how you actually get a publisher. And you're the first one that said, I just looked locally, which I think is such a brilliant idea, because a local publisher and a local author, I mean,
yeah,
it's a great combination. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Start local. Start small. I mean, I'm small. I wrote I kept an art journal. It was that simple. So yeah. I started locally.
So what was it like when the book was out and you start to get reviews and people start to reach out to you because they've read it?
Yeah. First I'll start with leading up to the release was very nerve-wracking. Very nerve-wracking. I had lots of worries about, what was I doing, putting our story out there, such a personal story. Would Bob, I thought Bob would be supportive of it, but I wasn't, whatever, doubt demons is what it was. And we had some trouble with production such that I did not actually hold the book until less than a week before its release date. And that was that was scary. And then it was out. We had a huge turnout for the release party. About 200 people came, which from what I'm told is, off the charts as far as attendance at a book release party. And it was a really fun party. I served obituary cocktails and funeral food and just tried to get and it was, the art that you see hanging behind me was all in this gallery. We held it in the gallery where Bob and I met, again, sort of bringing it back to the local. And it was lovely. So that felt really good. That felt really supportive. And then, you start to get, I have a lot of reviews on Amazon. That's a lot of hard work. That doesn't just happen. That was me writing emails with adding a little link and saying, would you click here and, and give me a 5-star review, and you have to say, give me a 5-star review, because like, what's the point of asking for a review if it's right? I mean, they don't have to give you 5 stars, but you need to give them an idea of what you want. That's the ask. I have my number of reviews are in 3 digits, which is really good. Just over 100. I have 1-star review with no comment. And you know what? I also took that as like, that's real. That's authentic. Somebody out there was like, meh. And you know what? That's okay. But lots of them were super supportive. And then the other thing that's happened, and this has been a little bit more recently, is, people find me now and they write me a message on social media and say things like, well, we just admitted mom to a hospice status and watching dad is breaking my heart. And just, and that is powerful. That's the reason that, that I did it. That, like, right there, just that's the pay as far as I'm concerned. That it's actually made a difference in someone's life and connected them, with me. I certainly respond to all of those things directly. And just trying to be out there with the people who really need it, who need someone that knows, someone who's been through it. And so I don't know if I've rattled on too long about
No,
the
that was
answer to
awesome. That was awesome. That was awesome. Okay. And I want to talk to you about what you said earlier, which is that you are an accidental entrepreneur. That's not exactly the phrase that you used, but reluctant, right? So you are putting yourself out there as an entrepreneur. It's not something that you expected, and it's not necessarily within your comfort zone.
Definitely not in my comfort zone.
What makes you uncomfortable about this process and this experience?
Oh, good. Are you sure this isn't therapy, Denise? What makes me uncomfortable? Well, a couple of things. One is, what I'm really good at is going into an existing organization and helping them change for the better. And usually what that involves is taking on an existing team and facilitating them as a team, right? And just empowering them. And the success comes, from the team. And I'm now a team of 1. And that is just lonely and difficult for me. I know there's a lot of people who do better as a team of 1. I am not that person. So I find it lonely. Of course, the topic, now we're talking about, in addition to feeling just naturally lonely because I'm one person instead of one person who leads a team. It's about the caregiving and loss of my husband. So it feels then there's that layer of loneliness on top of it. Yeah, and then I get some I have good ideas. And then to carry them out, again, no team. Like I don't have anybody to delegate, in healthcare, I look as a leader, I look a lot at the highest and best use of people's skill set, licensure, and experience, right? So you don't want an RN cleaning the exam room between visits. That is just not the highest and best use of his or her, right, experience, licensure, and skill set. And so it gets a little hard when you're doing this entrepreneurial stuff. I mean, I just interviewed a virtual assistant, which I'm so excited about, because, you only have 24 hours in the day. And so coming up with some of these ideas and then having to execute it start to finish with no assistance and not even anybody to really bounce ideas off of, I struggle with that a lot. That's probably why I'm reluctant entrepreneur. And I like to share. I mean, so when there's success, I want to share it with someone, when you're a CEO, one of the things that you do is you give credit when stuff goes well. You give it to the team, to whoever was, you have to be sure to give the credit to whoever really helped make that happen or made it happen. And you take blame when the stuff goes sideways. That's just, to me, that's helped me be effective in leadership roles. And, which is interesting because that's very similar to caregiving.
Yes.
Right? When the patient does well, it's like, rah, rah, you did it. And when the things go bad, it's like, okay, yeah, that's all my fault. Anyway, I love that part of leadership, and that's certainly missing when you work alone.
You alluded to something.
Yes.
When you were talking about putting the book out. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about what you were talking about. And it is that you are sharing the story of something really difficult that happened to you and with you and your husband. And I'm wondering what it's like to relive that period of your life through the book Living Beyond That Period of Your Life.
It's a great question to explore. I should back up and say, I lost my only sibling when I was 18 and he was 13. And it was, this year will be 39 years since he died. And first of all, that's one of the reasons, and I lost my mother some years later to cancer. One of the reasons I was attracted to Bob and his work was because I was, I knew that. But I will also say that I'm not sure I would have been able to do all of this if I hadn't had previous experience with profound loss and grief. So I'm in a few widows groups, and people post things in these widows groups about, stuff they're feeling and having anxiety over. And it's stuff that I know, but I know it from having lost my brother 39 years ago. And I know that I survived it. And it, like people say, what if there's one fear, what if I forget, like what his hands look like, what his feet look like, and I remember having that with my brother, like, oh my gosh, what if I forget the details? And, and then sometimes you do forget. And then lots of times when you just relax, it comes back to you. Right. And so I don't have any of that with Bob because I am a veteran, seasoned griever. I'm not sure. because it's hard. I'm not gonna lie. It is, I will tonight, I don't know why I did this, but I actually scheduled 2 interviews today, which I've never done 2 interviews in one day. And what always happens after an interview that night, usually after the interview, I replay what I said and I worry, like, did I explain that well? Did I do that justice? And there's usually a sleepless, maybe it's good that I scheduled 2 in one day. Maybe I'll just get 1 sleepless night and not spread it out. I don't know, but there is a lot of that goes with putting your story out there in such a raw way and exposing your vulnerability to the world. I think there's so much good that comes out of it that it's well worth it. I know there are people out there who are listening now or who I've spoken to in the past who feel really comforted by the fact that this book includes a lot of raw honesty about the sometimes less than beautiful moments in caregiving and the beautiful moments. So I know it's worth it, but it's difficult. And and I spend time kind of worrying about, am I honoring his memory, and am I honoring everyone else's work, and that sort of thing.
And I also think that really kind of coincides with the reluctant entrepreneur. It would be great if you had a team after the interview that said, this was fabulous. Here
Right.
are the really great sound bites that you offered. And then you could be like, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes, Denise.
Yes. Right. That's what
And that would be awesome.
Yeah. And then you can
if there was somebody watching in the green room, you mean, and you could say to me, oh my gosh, that was so good.
Yes. If you had your group come out and say, okay, we're great. Now let's get ready for the next one.
Yeah.
And here are the successes. Here are your great sound bites. I know it's hard.
Here are the opportunities, for improvement or highlighting. Yeah. You're absolutely right. This therapy session was well worth it.
So I've got one last question for you, and that is, what's your next book?
I'm not sure if there's a next book per se. There are a lot of projects happening that are, in my mind, as big or bigger than books. So I'm not 100% sure what the next, I'm not 100% sure that there is a next book. I've thought about maybe caregiver cards. Like you said, the caregiver does not typically have the wherewithal to do a chapter book on a serious topic. There are some great chapter books on end of life, on caregiving, but especially the end of life chapter books, really need to be read when everyone is well. And so I do like that about my book, that it's got some pages with all of 10 words on it that yet have a powerful takeaway. And I feel like cards might do that. And of course, I'm an artist, so the idea of being able to do some art on each card with a message that is supportive of caregivers seems like a really neat thing to do.
And I just love that we can take an idea and think about the form that's appropriate and really create our own rules about what's the form that's appropriate for family caregivers. Really thinking about, this is a very specific market that requires very specific products and services. And that you have that insight about what does a family caregiver need. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so the name of the book is The Hospice Doctor's Widow. It's a journal. Mm-hmm. So for our viewers and listeners who'd like to learn more about your work and the book, what's your website address?
hospicedoctorswidow.com.
Nice and easy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Jennifer, this was awesome. Thank you so much. And good luck later today on your next interview.
Thank you. Well, you made it easy. So if my next one makes it as easy as you, then I'll be in good shape.
Thanks everybody so much for listening and watching. I'm Denise Brown, and we invite you to join me in the Caregiving Book Club. If you are an author or thinking about writing a book, we'd love to connect with you. Okay, thanks everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.